When November came around and Christmas season started, I started baking bread to sample the jams and jellies I sell. Well, I had more comments, good comments on my bread and people wanting to buy the breads. My bread's not one of the normal ones. I call it craft bread because I mix and change things in it. What I'm going to do first is yeast. Now this is a rapid. Basically, this is an active dry. You can either use the pack or 2 1/4 teaspoons. Since this is a chocolate bread, it's not a sweet bread. It is actually a savory, but it does have some sweetness to it. So what I do is, instead of mixing water with my yeast, I'm using coffee that I got from the coffee shop just up here in the hallway. It calls for 1 cup. I never hardly use my machine mixer. I like mixing by hand. What you want to do is I get that yeast all foamy. Rinse it around to get some off the side. My recipe calls for 1 teaspoon of salt. I'm using finely grated sea salt. And then it calls for 2 tablespoons of sugar. And then I remix it. Because what's going to happen is the salt and the sugar and the coffee is going to act to get that yeast moving even a little faster on proofing. They also call for 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda. I'll mix it up. What I'm doing here too, I see flakes of yeast, so I want to keep dissolving that yeast in here too. Now I can start on with the dry measurements for the flour. You can either use that or you buy the bread flour, which is a little bit more. Difference is the bread flour is more refined and sifted, where this isn't only sifted once, the bread flour is sifted twice. And like I say, this calls for 4 1/2. I put 4 in. I'll leave that half to a cup. To when I start mixing it, I might have to add more. Now I still need the 1/3 of a cup baking cocoa. They say use the best you can find. I don't know if the Hershey's the best, but that's the one I use. 1/2 cup of the chocolate morsels, something for a little extra show. You can see the marbleized in it. My recipe, of course, doesn't call for sunflowers, but I put the sunflowers in here to add a little bit of the saltiness to it and a little bit of a crunch. Here again, they call for, I put in about 1/2 cup. You need 1 egg. The last of the liquid, 1 cup of milk, and that's buttermilk, help complement the yeast. I don't use butter. But what I'll do is, I've been using more olive oil, and I get mine from the olive tap up there. They called for 2 tablespoons of butter, so I put 2 of the olive oil in. I'll mix it up some. Like I said, I don't have all the flour in yet, but I want to get one rotation of mix in there to start combining the ingredients. Now, since this is a heavy bread, it's because I'm adding extra stuff to it. I will add some wheat gluten. Normally they say a teaspoon per cup of flour. Some recipes I've seen 4 teaspoons per loaf. I don't use that much. I might only use half of what they called for. There I put in about 2 1/2 because I figure my flour is going to end up being about 5 1/2 cups. I'll dump in a little flour, but when I get to that mix right there, that's when I start mixing by hand. It's when they say when your spoon gets too hard to move, you can either use a machine, a mixer, or your hand. But I dumped in about a cup more. And what I do is, when you watch me do this, you're going to probably think hate my dough. because I really work it, move it around, punch it down. And I'm never too worried about if it's too dry or too wet, because I can either add the liquid or I can add more flour. But you just keep working around. They say need to about, some of these recipes are calling for 8 to 10 minutes. And I don't go that far, that long, because I don't see the need for it, because I find my consistency when I'm working it like this. Now this here is just a little bit on the dry side, so I'm just going to add a little bit more. They normally say add about a teaspoon at a time, and I dump in some. As you can see, the flour is starting to, my dough is turning brown more than white, because I'm getting the flour worked into the mix. I always check the consistency by holding it up to see how fast it takes to pull apart. This here probably just needs a little bit more liquid. I'll just sprinkle some on. Turn it over, and I try picking up as much flour as I can. And just keep working around. What you want to do is have a smooth ball of dough like this. That's not sticky to your hand. You see it's not sticking to my hand or anything, so this here is about ready to finish the step by, I put it in another pan. You got to oil the pan or else your dough is going to stick to it when it's rising. What I do is, here again, I'll use olive oil. Now this one here, I just got from the olive tap. It is a grape seed. Why I'm using grape seed is because it's doesn't have a strong flavor. So, and then I'm going to mix just a little bit of vanilla in there. I'll work this around in my pan. What I want to do is make sure my sides are all oiled up. Now I'll put the dough in, and you want to move it around. You want to coat everything on that. Now you want to do is to put this in a area from the draft, free from drafts, and I'll cover it up. Earlier today I started another batter. What you want to do is flour the surface, either countertop. I got a large cutting board at home. Roll it out on the surface. Now this here is kind of sticky, so what I'll do is I'll just add a little bit more, spread it around, knead it a couple times. Try to get the creases out. Even a small crease will give a distinction to your loaf of bread dough too. I pinch the seams in. Fold in the bottom. Always you gotta oil your pan. Here again, I'll do the fast method I'll put that in the loaf. Like I say, I'll pinch that seam here a little bit. I'm not too worried about it because I'll brush the top, and when I brush the top, she'll actually get sealed up some. I work the edges in. Now here again, you gotta wait about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour on this one to have it raised. I brushed the top always with an olive oil and egg. I hope to be baking here and selling here. And like I say, I do some craft. I do the normal bread tube, baguettes, stuff like that, but I really like to experiment. But my experimentations seem to work every time.